Welcome, everyone, to Collaboration Conversations. I have to think about that sometimes, what that name is. You got a lot going on in your life. Sometimes things get a little twisted up, don't they? I am excited to be here today. Again, my co-host, Pearl, is unable to be with us today. She will be back soon. In the meantime, I have a fabulous guest co-host today, Miss Jessica Rivera. Welcome, Jessica.
Hello. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, I am so excited to have this conversation with you today. And folks, just so you know, we're going to have a guest popping in, at least one guest popping in a little bit. But let me tell you just a snippet about Jessica, and then I want her telling about herself. So, she is a business and mindset coach for leaders. She's a mentor, a speaker, and a facilitator. And I am going to let her tell the rest. So, Jessica, welcome, and please tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and a little bit about your journey of getting here.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'd love to share. So, I'm really passionate about the impact we make on ourselves and on others as leaders. And this kind of came about because throughout kind of my career, I've had leaders that I liked, and I had leaders that actually, let me say this. I've liked everybody. I will say that. But I think some of the management styles were better for me and not so great. And
Right.
it's interesting. I used to see people speak about this mentor and that leader and how much they inspired them and helped them push forward. And I was always kind of jealous of that. And so I wanted to become the leader I felt like I never had. And that
Mm,
is what I did. And so now I help other leaders really make that impact that I know they want to make. But understanding how to lead people can be challenging. I don't think we ever got taught how to be leaders. Like, it's
no.
just like, you're a great individual contributor. Now go ahead and lead a team,
Yeah,
manage
right.
these people. And it can be challenging. So I help leaders really get to their peak leadership and really make the impact that they want.
Wow, that is so needed. So needed. There are, a lot of people who would like to be a good leader, but don't have a clue how to do it. A lot of folks who are, mm, what shall I say, egocentric enough that being a good leader isn't necessarily what they're striving for, but just to
Hmm.
be in control.
Yeah.
And so many things in between. And so the service that you bring is powerful. Who are the ideal clients for you?
Yeah, I think my ideal client is somebody who I typically, it's interesting. I love working with corporate executives because that's where I come from. But my client, because I was in sales, was always a small business. So I have tons of small businesses that are my clients right now. So when I was in corporate, I had small businesses as my client, which end up being my clients right now. And then also I have corporate leaders as well that are my clients. But the ideal client for me is a leader who touches people. So, sometimes you're a manager in an organization or you have a VP title, but
Right,
you don't manage people.
right.
So, for me, it's the person who manages people who are really in control of other people's careers. And
Yeah.
I don't think we realize the impact that we make on others. And we can make someone's day or we can destroy it.
Or
And
life.
or life, exactly.
Yes.
Um, and so I believe most 95% of managers want to be a good manager, even the egocentric ones, right? Because
Yeah.
lifting up your people actually lifts you up, right? I don't know if they really realize that. The more your people are doing better, the more it actually looks good on you. So even the
Yes.
egocentric ones, I think, want to be a good leader, but don't know how, either because they're
Right.
too stuck and focused on themselves
Yeah.
and taking all of the credit, and or they just don't have the skills, and they're probably
Yeah.
too critical on themselves. So because they're critical on themselves, they have this they want to be a perfectionist, they want everything to be perfect, they're controlling, then they also disseminate that down to others. So imagine,
Right.
if I'm critical on myself, of course I'm going to be critical on everybody else.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah.
how it works.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about how collaboration plays into leadership.
Hmm. Well, collaboration is everything, right? So we just spoke about control and perfectionist, being a perfectionist. And so those are like the anti collaboration mindset. Um, And so if I'm trying to control the outcomes, I'm micromanaging, right? Whether people like, and micromanaging, it's interesting. Many times we don't realize we're micromanaging as leaders. I had a leader one time tell me, imagine if I micromanaged. And I thought to myself, that's all you do. That's all you do. So many times we don't realize that we're micromanaging when we're leaders, but that stifles collaboration. And when you are truly collaborating and really honoring the differences that people have, that's where the most innovative ideas come from. That's where people can really be creative. That's where we get to the next level of business, when we are allowing everybody to play their role and not trying to take over. And what we don't realize as leaders is we are stifling our own energy. Yeah. We are stifling our own creativity when we're trying to do everybody else's job.
Right. Do you counsel them in any way or give them tips on how to find out how they are perceived if people see them as a micromanager or controlling or not a leader, or how do they go about finding out what the perception of them is?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it's hard. I do give them tips, right? And it's something that I practiced myself, because it's a great question, right? How do you truly know? Right. And many people, even in surveys, right? So a lot of companies do like employee engagement surveys. People are afraid to answer those questions because they do not want to get found out.
Yeah.
Which that alone is sad, because if you are afraid to answer a survey and you cannot be honest because you're afraid to get found out, because you're afraid of the repercussions, right? Then obviously there is not any kind of psychological safety. You do not feel safe being yourself or even saying an opinion if you can't even do it on a survey.
Right.
But yes, I do counsel them on trying to figure that out, because it's hard. Self-awareness is difficult, right? It's hard to have self-awareness because we're ourselves and we are always trying our best. And so some tips on how to figure out, okay, how do I know if I'm micromanaging? How do I know if I'm leading my team right? How do I know if people are happy? Number one is asking and soliciting feedback. Now, the thing is, people are not going to give you real feedback. Just think about it. If you didn't like something I was wearing, if you thought me wearing a jean jacket on this live was inappropriate, let's just say, right? This is a good example. It would be difficult for you to tell me, hey, could you change? It doesn't feel good to give negative feedback. Now think about it. If I was your boss, even more difficult. And while we all think, we're cool and we're nice, it's still hard. It doesn't matter how good your relationship is with your boss. It is difficult to give negative feedback.
Absolutely.
But it's a practice. The more you continue to ask and solicit that feedback and create that level of trust, they're going to tell you. It's going to be hard, but they will eventually tell you.
Yes.
But some other ways, until you kind of build up that trust, one way I've done is doing my own personal survey on SurveyMonkey. That's one way to do it. You have to be really specific about the questions you ask. That is one way. But the very best way to do it is if you have a team, pick one spokesperson. They collect the feedback. So it'll be like a green light, yellow light, red light. They collect the feedback. They, go to the team members. Then they give it back to you on what's green, what are you doing really well, what's yellow, and what's red.
I like that.
Yeah, because they trust each other. Right. And they're going to trust that this person is, and you have to pick somebody who, I would always pick, I wouldn't pick like somebody that I was really close to on the team. Like, you have like, I hate to say favorites, but there are people that you're closer to on the team than others, right? I definitely wouldn't pick that
personalities. Play.
Right, right, exactly. Yes. You just happen to mesh with that person or connect with that person more.
Right.
Don't pick that person. You want to pick someone who's a little more neutral, and that will be the spokesperson. They'll collect the feedback and they will give it to you written. He actually, in this case, he disseminated it to the entire team and then also gave it to me. And I think that built more trust because they knew I was working on it. I cared about how they felt. Right. And that really built a lot of trust. And I told them, okay, I'll work on the red lights. What's interesting is that the red lights weren't that big of a deal, but they still hurt. They still hurt me. Sure. Nobody likes negative feedback. But it was really good for me to acknowledge and build trust and let them know, hey, I will work on these things. Even though the reality of it is that it wasn't major.
Yeah. And it's important, I think, that they know that those people that we work with, our team, our staff, whatever that structure looks like, that they know that we are willing to work on ourselves, that we don't, we walk the walk and talk the talk.
Correct. And we don't think we're perfect, right? And we don't think we know it all. And we don't think we're done growing. We're never done growing unless we're dead.
6 feet under, you can stop growing.
Yeah, exactly. But I always have something to learn. Anybody can teach me something. But I think, yes, you build that credibility when nothing is worse. And this has happened to me where we're being trained on something and the people above you are in the corner, like not even paying attention. It's like, you want me to get trained on this, but the reality is you probably need some of this training, especially if it's emotional intelligence training. We can all use some of it.
Yes.
And they're in the back, typing up or chatting. And it's like, it loses credibility. Yeah. Now I would still, work on it for myself, but it made me look at them like, what do you have? Nothing.
You're not willing to do this.
You're not willing to do this. You're not willing to grow and learn. And we can all become better humans. It's again, especially when it comes to emotional intelligence.
Right. Agreed. Do you see much in terms of collaboration amongst those team leaders, those, in terms of within a corporation? Are you seeing much in terms of them coming together as team leaders and collaborating? Because I know over the years, silos has been a big issue, and you didn't see that collaboration happening between departments. It was like, no, this is mine. You can't touch it. Are we seeing a loosening of that? Are we seeing people start to collaborate more and less of the silos, or not? What are you seeing out there?
No. I think that the one big problem that everybody has is communication, because everybody's working in a silo. And I think what I would always push back on, even when it was our department complaining, is, okay, well, what are we doing though? Like, how are we also contributing to the problem? Right. Because many times you can actually fix that yourself. Yes. You can fix the way the other person communicates when you communicate better. When you are the one asking more of the questions, when you are trying to fix things. Hey, Christian.
Hi, Christian.
What's up? Hi, how are you?
Oh, great. Nice to see you here, Christian. So we were just talking. I don't know if you could hear what we were saying, Christian, but we're talking about leadership within the corporations and the role that collaboration plays. And I was just curious whether or not we're seeing a diminishing of silos and more collaboration between department heads, between these departments, working together more and collaborating more for the good of the company, as opposed to, all of the silo things that we've seen over the years. And Jessica burst my bubble and told me, no, we're not seeing that.
I was saying that the biggest complaint I hear from organizations is that, there's no communication. The accounting team doesn't speak to this person, or the lack of communication, because everybody is just focused on their own department and working in a silo. And that happens in a big organization like the one I worked in, and then as well as my experience in smaller organizations as well. So I don't know if you wanted to contribute to that conversation.
Yeah. And so, Christian, let's do two things here, and I want to kind of comment on that as well. But Christian, let's have you introduce yourself. Tell us just a teensy bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of dive back into this conversation about this. Okay?
Sure. Well, my name is Christian Charvet. I was in the automotive industry for about 25 years. I did everything in the car business, from washing cars to running dealerships. What I love about it is really building teams. That's what I think made me successful in the car business, is getting buy-in from people, getting them to realize the benefits of, working as a team. Actually, one question I always ask on interviews is, were you ever part of a team, or did you play sports in school, or even in the band or whatever it was? I think when people understand what it is to work as a group, your collective outcome is always going to be better. So, but yeah, I'm a big believer in having the right meetings, not just meetings for the sake of having meetings.
Yes.
I always say having meetings for the sake of having meetings is meaningless. So it's funny that you guys mentioned this, because I recently just met with a group, and one thing they said is that when they do have meetings and the higher ups are present, it's hard for them to voice their genuine concerns.
We were kind of talking about that a little bit earlier. Yes, along that line. So yes,
it's kind of funny what you guys are saying, talking about. So it's a problem. I think one issue that a lot of teams when they're or managers when they're running meetings is, I always like to say, there's no rank in the meetings, right? If everybody can speak openly and
yes,
obviously not worry about their job being on the line because of what they, them voicing their concerns, I think that's crucial to the growth of whatever department or business it is.
I absolutely agree. And one of the things I'd like to bring this back to is the profitability of team collaboration, not only within a team, but the teams collaborating together, how that really does impact the bottom line, right?
Oh, absolutely.
You don't even have to be in sales, right, to impact the bottom line, because at the end of the day, when a team increases production equals profits.
Yes.
And so I don't think that leaders put enough importance on having people really show up as themselves, having people really not having to like do all of the code switching or be making sure that they're perfect, or like really just being themselves really can help them become innovative. Like we were saying before, collaborate, and then everything flows easier when I could just be me and do my work.
Yeah.
I've had meetings where in the dealership world where, a lot of people buy cars, right? So sometimes the best person to look at my department is somebody who's not in it.
Yeah.
Someone from accounting or somebody from the service department. And I've heard it on the side, outside of meetings, they said, I sent somebody over here to buy a car, and they said they had a terrible experience. I want to know about that. I want to know how I can get better, or what issues they had, because now I'm going to get insight that is it's more of a outside perspective, right, than just me looking at how we're doing business. I may think I have it right all the time, and until somebody else sees it and goes, I think you could do it better. Then
we all have blind spots, don't we?
Absolutely.
We all have blind spots.
I think the key is accepting that feedback instead of trying to justify it. But somebody wasn't feeling well. Whenever you're thinking, you're probably wrong.
You got to own it. You have to own it. I just posted something on LinkedIn yesterday, I think it was, and it says, don't let your ego get in the way of your growing. And that's a lot of times what happens is we get on the defensive. When somebody says, well, this happened, you go, that person came in and it was, they'll give you a million reasons why the situation went bad, instead of saying, well, wait a minute, how could it have gone better? So you have to take the ego out of it. I think that's the key to having any growth in anything you do, right? Is just look at it and own the experience. If it's a bad experience, own it, and see how you can grow from it.
And doesn't that all, in a lot of ways, come back to corporate culture? And doesn't that start at the top?
It all comes back to corporate culture. Yeah. And it definitely starts at the top.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've been lucky enough to do some training with the Blue Angels.
Nice.
Which is pretty cool. And one of the things that I wasn't actually in the plane. I was
shocked.
One of the things, after every show that they do, they have a debrief. And it's everybody from like the captains down the line to people that are on the ground crews that maintain the planes. And they have a debrief where there is no rank in that meeting. And they have no problem pointing out mistakes. that they see not just one within themselves, but in other people. Like somebody will say, "Hey, so and so, you came out a little early. You made that right turn. It should have been a little bit later on." And they'll go, "Won't happen again. I'm on it. Won't happen again." Like they want to address the issue. They want to get better because let's be clear, in that type of environment, mistakes, people die. Right?
Many lives are at stake.
Exactly.
Many.
So you're flying 18 inches apart. These two planes,
right.
They start out 36 inches apart, and then they get to within 18 inches apart. So they have to be able to take feedback and criticism, and they have to take it in a manner where they're not being offensive. So offended. I'm sorry.
Offended. Right.
Yeah. I think that goes back to like radical candor, and in that situation, right, you can't get offended, right, because there's lives at risk. So I think accepting the feedback there is probably a little more normal. And if you're not being critical, you probably that's like the bad side, right? You probably get paid to be critical and find those blind spots. But
sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just saying, but when you relate that thought process to like the corporate world or, working or your business, it can get, your ego can definitely get in the way more there. But there's a book called Rules, No Rules. Oh, there's several books on radical candor, but Rules, No Rules is about the culture in Netflix. And everybody is supposed to challenge the ideas of anyone, including the CEO. And so they were pushing back on allowing movies to be not streamed but downloaded, and he was saying no way, like he didn't want to do that. He didn't care if anybody else did it, and they continued to push back until he finally gave in. And he said that was a wrong move on his part. He should have given in a lot sooner, because there was profit there to be made, and the consumer, it was better for the consumer. So, but many cultures do not adapt candor to begin with. Forget about radical candor.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. How do you? I guess the issue is, how do you? If you're in a position, if you're not in the leadership, the highest guy, highest person on the totem pole, how do you get that culture to change, right? If that person's not listening. So I think at some point, that's how you lose employees. Right. Yeah. Because I've always said people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. When they kind of keep putting your head up against the ceiling and you're saying, hey, these guys don't get it. Either one, you shrink, right? And you just say, well, I'm just going to stay quiet in these meetings because they're not listening. Or you say, you know what, this isn't the right place for me. And that's how you lose talented people. People always say to me, they go, it's hard to find good people. I'm like, no, it's not. They just have jobs.
Yeah.
They have jobs.
I would say there's a third option in there, Christian. I agree. You shrink, you decide to go somewhere else, or you decide to be yourself at work. And that is a risk. Mm-hmm. That is a risk, but there could be a huge reward there. Because sometimes we don't know, or people don't know what we don't know, right? So when you start showing up as yourself, you have no idea what the response could be. It could be negative, but then you were planning on leaving anyway, right?
Yeah.
Or it could be super positive, and they're like, wow, this person's really showing up. This person is really giving the best ideas. So there is a third option there that I think can be very scary to take. But you can be that person who is like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to show up as me. And if they don't like it, then it wasn't working out anyway, because I felt like I had to shrink, right? Or I'm not feeling like I'm myself, or I'm freaking miserable. But you know what? If I'm miserable, I might as well be myself anyway.
That's a good point.
That's a great point. Yeah. And it takes, it's when somebody doesn't have anything to lose at one point, and they're like, you know what? That's normal when that person comes out.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I feel like that happened for me.
Yeah, me too.
That I said, it felt suffocating, when I had to sit there and justify what I felt like was me treating my people well. When I felt like, okay, I don't care about, we're in sales, right? So if somebody went to the doctor in the middle of the day, like, I don't care. I literally don't care as long as they're getting their job done. And the numbers were there. I trusted my people, and it got exhausting and then I just started pushing back. Like, you know what? You could think what you want. I'm telling you, I work with this person all of the time, and this is what I believe. And until I know for certain something else, I'm just going to go with my gut. My gut is telling me X. And it felt so freeing to push back in a way that was like non-confrontational, but truly in alignment with what I felt. Like, that felt amazing. Because in corporate, many times, and I had a live on this on LinkedIn several weeks ago, and somebody was saying that her either HR or her boss was forcing her to give somebody a lower merit raise to fit like on the curve. There's a curve. And I will tell you, I don't know a manager that hasn't been exposed to that, where we're like, let's say, Christian, you are on my team, and I don't know, let's say if you're a good employee, you were a 3. And if you're a really good employee, you're a 4. If you're not a good employee or not doing your job or whatever, however they want to label it, you're a 2. They would force you to push somebody into the 2 to fit the curve. And so she was like, she was in my comments telling me how, she was going through that. And we've all been through that. Most corporate managers that I know have been through that, where they force you. And it feels demoralizing for you and for the team member, obviously.
Yeah.
Now there's the other side of the coin, where people don't do enough to managers, leaders don't do enough to cultivate their people, manage their people, and give them the best rating just to give them the best rating. I don't believe in that either. But it is freeing. I can say all that to say it can be very freeing when you are just yourself at work.
Agreed.
Yeah. And hasn't all of this that we're talking about right now, hasn't all of this in combination with the pandemic led to this great exodus of people leaving companies and just saying, I'm done?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's literally what happened with me. I started a business February 1st of 2020. Right before the world shut down. It was like, what am I doing? Left a very lucrative career to, I was working with someone. It was weird because he actually became my GM. He wasn't my GM. He came from another store. And I went to this dealer group because I saw the potential that they had. And even to this day, I've said it, it's an incredible place to work. And when people ask me about it, I said it's an incredible place to work if you're not in management.
And folks, we've lost Christian for a moment here, so he'll be back.
Yeah.
There you are. We lost you for a moment there, Christian. You kind of froze up.
All right.
So you said it's an incredible place to be if you're not in management. That was the last thing we heard.
If you're a customer, incredible place. If you're an employee, like a salesperson, technician, if you're not in management, it was an incredible place to work. And I saw the turnover in management there also. And after I left, people called me. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know you were going over there. If I had known, I would have warned you about that place." It was just such a this is how we've always done it type of place. And I was like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Like, I thought you brought me here to take this place to another level. I thought we were here to grow this, to continue to grow the business. And it was just like, we're okay. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't work for me. Like, I saw the potential. I saw if we tweak things and if we got people on board to do things together, it was gonna continue to grow. But literally, it was
some people are just closed to collaboration, to empowering others, right? So how did the two of you, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you are working in this leadership arena at this time, correct? Okay.
Correct.
How do you find those people who are open to change, who are open to assessing what they're doing right and not right in the world of collaboration and leadership. How do you find them so that you can work with them? Because obviously not everybody is open, and some people are never going to be open. Some people may be open at some point, but aren't there now. It's a growth process, right?
Sure.
How do you find those people?
Well, one, I think you have to grow those people. I think when you go into a place and you may find that someone had that mentality and it was kind of like that, shrinking mentality that they were like, you know what, it's not going to change. So I'm just going to blend in. You got to kind of bring that person back out. But you have to get buy-in from people.
Right.
I think it's one of those, it's very difficult when the owner of a company, it doesn't have that mentality, because it's like, what are you going to do? You're not going to change the owner, right? You can have the conversations and say, hey, listen, give me an opportunity. Like, you brought me in here to, trust me with the process, give me 60 days. I did that with one of my old dealerships. When I went into interview, they were interviewing me and a couple of people, and I said, listen, I'll do it for free for 90 days. And he was like, what? I said, he asked me if you want to discuss the pay plan. I said, whatever the pay plan is, it is. I said, let's do it for 90 days. If at the end of 90 days, you're happy and I'm happy, we'll figure out the pay plan. And I knew my value. I knew that I was going to bring value to the dealership. So I was able to get him to kind of buy into it. Like, okay, let's do it. And it was 6 years that I was there until they ended up selling the dealership. But it's tough. It's a tough situation. Again, when you have an owner that doesn't see it, I think it becomes very challenging. It's something that I struggle with. How do you change the mindset of an owner? Because again, it does start from the top.
Yeah.
So who typically invites either of you into the company? At what level are you being invited in?
Owners normally.
Owners normally. Okay.
Well, I think many people think somebody else is the problem.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So when we get brought in, when we get brought in, it's like typically to train somebody else. And like I mentioned to you, Regina, it's like when we get this like dynamic training on emotional intelligence, and then the VPs or the SVPs or the EVPs are in the back of the room, like doing nothing. Same concept. That's when we kind of get called in. But that's why I love kind of working one-on-one with leaders, because I think Christian or Regina, one of you asked a question, like, how do you change that culture? I believe it can start individually with the one leader in the organization, because they saw, when I really started doing all of this work on myself and really started changing my team, other people saw the way my team was working and how much easier our job got and how everything just seemed to be flowing. It's like, what's going on over there? You guys seem super happy and you're getting the numbers, And so I think that you can, in your small ecosystem, as small as it may be, or as big as it may be, you have the power to change it.
So that person that has that power, who's in that, they might not be in a position to bring in someone like you guys that can actually work on the organization, but they can make an impact on their own. Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct. Yes. And so, for example, I have leaders who are in my personal group coaching program, as well as me going in and training, let's say, organizations. Someone can choose on their own to join the group coaching program and really just work on themselves and cultivate their own psychological safety on their team, which will then spread out to the rest of the organization.
Right. And makes them so much more valuable to any organization.
That's right.
So if they choose not to stay there, they've built more value into themselves.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I have an executive right now who, within my program, she ended up moving to a different company, and now she's up for a raise. And when she told them that she had been doing leadership development for a year, they were so impressed that she did this completely on her own, which then now gives her a leg up for that promotion.
Right. Very good. Yeah, because there could be a difference, at least in the perception of the value, if it's something that you do on your own versus a course that your company put you through. Correct? Yeah. What are you seeing, Christian, as the biggest, a two-sided coin here, the biggest hindrances to collaboration within an organization, and the biggest benefits, or the biggest drivers of collaboration?
It's a great question. People have to be open-minded. I recently was training a group, a dealer group, but they brought me in, same thing like Jessica mentioned. They hired me to train the sales team, and we quickly realized it was management training that was needed, right? And then you had a manager at that store where that person felt they just they had it figured out. And initially they were great. They were open to everything, but then at one point it became like, all right, I've got it from here, and things very, very quickly changed. So the person has to be open-minded, and it has to be ongoing, right? I think leadership is a process, not a position, right? It's something
Yes, I like that.
So making sure that you're continuing, if you want your employees to improve, you have to improve as well. So whether it's reading books or having a coach or things of that nature, it's a process. You have to continue to grow. And I asked Matt, one of the best questions you can ask when you're doing an initial meeting with a group is like, hey, what's the last book you read on leadership? Yeah. And people are sitting there like,
Yeah.
And I'm like, if you haven't read a book recently on leadership, then that kind of shows, if you're playing baseball, you're taking practice swings, right? Or you're throwing one, right. Whatever it is, you have to continue to develop. So
right.
There's so many new strategies and techniques and things that you can find out there. So that's one thing. The hindrance is people who are just, if it's an ego driven, actually, I'm going to say something. I worked with someone who was very, high ego, alpha personality. And it was right. Just, but I'll tell you something, that person was the most understanding of his flaws than anyone I've ever met. He told me flat out, he goes, I know what to do. I just don't know how to talk to people. He's like, when I talk to them, they're not going to like me. So I want you to talk to them for me. Right. So and he would say it like,
it's good to have self-awareness.
Oh no, he was incredible in that sense. Young guy, very, did very successful. But he goes, I know how I want things done. And I want them done the way I want them done now. But I need you to get them to do it, because if I tell them, I'm either going to fire them or I'm going to, curse them out, or they're going to curse me out. And so, I think sometimes the person has to be self-aware. I think the biggest part, if they're not, and if they're in a bubble and they have that closed-minded mentality where, hey, I've got it, I can figure it out. Not even I can figure it out. It's I've got it figured out. Because the problem is normally changing.
Right.
So there's not one answer to every problem, right? If that person is closed-minded, you're not going to have any success in developing that team or that person.
Yeah, good point. I'd like to have each of you share your best advice at this point to people who may be listening to our show today, who are in a leadership position and wanting to, recognizing things aren't perfect and wanting to make some change. What advice would you give them today to help them take their organization where they want it to go? Jessica, let's start with you.
I would say the best thing that they could do is work on themselves. I mean, you will inspire your team to also work on their self and get better. And, like we were saying earlier, there's the growth, the evolution never stops. And like Christian was saying, if someone is not working on themselves, we have so much access. Mm-hmm. We have so much access today. Okay, you don't read, no problem. Audio. Okay, you don't like audiobooks. Okay, podcasts. Okay, you don't like podcasts. YouTube. Join a program. There's so much access, real world access, where you can do your own research, right? You can join coaching groups. You can get a coach. There's just, again, so many things you could do to really get yourself to that next level and kind of quantum leap your success if you choose to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a constant, I always say always a student. You're always growing, always learning. You have to be admirable. I think if your team kind of sees that, hey, like Jessica said, hey, this person's continuing to grow as an individual. He's reading books, even having a group like we did in my old store was having a book club where we were all reading a certain book. Managers were reading one book, salespeople were reading another book. And we would talk about it. And it became a culture of continuous improvement.
Love it.
A culture of growth and, people, your sales team having, or your employee, not just your sales team, but everybody in your store should have a career path. What is it you want to do? I can't tell you how many people have left because they had an opportunity to go into finance when they were in sales, and they're like, I always wanted to go into finance. That was my goal. I wanted to get there. And they just went and found the opportunity elsewhere. So discussing what their goals are and continuing to grow your team and understanding that it's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to say, hey, you know what? I apologize. That was a bad call on my part. I could have done this differently. I asked the question of my team a lot when I was a sales manager. I used to say, hey, is there anything I could be doing differently? What do you guys need from me? And I think if you have an honest conversation and sometimes you don't have to respond, just take the feedback and say, you know what? Make sure you're making notes and say, I'm going to work on those things. Instead of saying, well, the reason I don't do this is because, stop giving excuses, stop giving reasons, right? Yeah. Just taking the information, let them feel like, hey, I can talk to him. If I'm approachable, I know so many people that have this, they say I have an open door policy and their door is always closed. I know somebody right now, his door is always closed, but he will tell you he has an open door policy.
I know somebody who has an open door policy and the door's always open and no one goes in there because they're afraid.
Exactly. That's just it. And that's the other thing is it's also how you say things. I had a friend of mine call me. He moved into management and he was in finance for actually longer than I was in the car business. And he moved into management. He called me up. He goes, can you give me some books or some advice? I love the way you manage. And what can you give me as far as advice? I said, his name was Frank. I said, Frank, listen, I said, it doesn't matter how much you know if you don't know how to say it. If you say it, poorly, and if you can't communicate your message, nobody's going to listen.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest, hurdle. A lot of people have that issue, but again, continuing to grow, like you said, podcasts, YouTube, I call it Google University.
Google University, yes. Google is my friend. YouTube is my friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. But I want to tap into something you said, Christian, because it's so important, which is communication. Communication is the second pillar of impact leadership, and what we teach in there is, of course, it's never what we say, it's always how we say it. That is true. And then having courageous communication sometimes means you being vulnerable. Mm-hmm. You being able to be vulnerable is courageous communication. And I don't think we get taught that, right? We want to be strong. We want to be, we're the leader now, so we know a lot. But when you are vulnerable, that's when you really make those true, deep connections with others.
I agree.
So true. So true. This has been great, Jessica and Christian. I'm so glad that you were able to be on the show today and help us deep dive this collaboration and leadership and how they go hand in hand. There's so many aspects of collaboration, and I just love it every time we have different guests on here. We go a different direction about collaboration, and it's wonderful. It's exactly what I'd hoped for. So thank you both so much for being here. Jessica, can you tell us quickly how folks can reach you if they want to get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I hang out on LinkedIn here, but I'm also mainly on Instagram at Coach Jessica Rivera. There, I'm always in my stories and sharing often there for sure. But that's one way. You can also reach me at jessica@jrcoaching.net. That's my email address, or jrcoaching.net, which is my website. My DMs are always open, so go ahead and send me a message. I'd love to start a conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. And Christian, how can folks get in touch with you if they want to reach out?
So my email address I do automotive sales training, but it's email address is christian@automotivementorship.com.
Love it.
Instagram is really the big thing. So CCH116 at Instagram on Instagram is best way to reach me also. So
awesome. Thank you again, both of you, for being here today. It was great value. Appreciate it so very much.
No, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. And thank you, folks, for listening in today. Be sure and reach out to Jessica and Christian with any questions that you have, or if you've got a challenge in your organization, I'm sure they can help you with that. So thanks again. We'll see you next time on Collaboration Conversations. Bye for now.
Thank you.